Hi, everyone.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Well-Fed Business Podcast with myself, Connor Benham, and the evil, bald genius. Now, before we get really stuck in, by the time you're listening to this, unless we release it as an emergency podcast, Elite is almost full. So, if you're listening to this after the 17th of April, too late. You missed out, buddy. But if we release it as an emergency podcast and you're listening to this before the 17th of April, there's
Or on the
probably,
17th.
or on the 17th, thank you, John, there's probably one place left. And as long as you get your application in by close of business or midnight, we'll say midnight of the 17th of April, you can have a chance of joining us in Elite because we've done a bloody good job of filling it up. And that's exactly what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about how we are we going to say the numbers, John? Are we going to be internet marketers?
I think we should, not because we want to brag, but because we want to make a point.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how we made 82k in a little under 3 weeks, I do believe, without any extravagant paid advertising. And we've got very little.
We didn't have any paid advertising at all.
Without any paid advertising. And
or social media, to be fair. Not traditionally posting instead.
No, not traditional social media. Essentially defying all the norms that are going around at the moment. Ooh, you gotta post on social media all the time.
We avoid it like the plague. Well, okay, let me just give them the stats so they can get some perspective. I've got them in front of me. I've got a spreadsheet. I'm autistic. Of course I've got a spreadsheet. We've made in this year, from the beginning, we've made 104k in sales. This is direct sales, this isn't revenue. This is direct sales from the process we're about to talk about. 104k in sales. And then in the last 3 weeks, we've done 82. The reason for the disproportionate skew there is we took our foot off the accelerator deliberately to get some things set up. And 3 weeks ago, we put the accelerator down again. Within 3 weeks, we had 82k in sales. That's sterling. So 104 total, 82 in 3 weeks. Average sale is £13,000. Average per call is 9.5 grand. And that's a closing rate of 72.73% in an industry where the average is about, was it 30 plus or minus 5, you told me?
It's usually 25% plus or minus 5%.
Oh, okay.
But most sales houses would snap your hand off at a consistent 20% KPI.
So basically, if we take the 25%, because it makes the maths easier. I'm almost 3 times an acceptable, more than an acceptable closing rate.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll come to why that is in a moment.
We will, because we've got a singing and dancing fancy new sales system, haven't we?
We have. It doesn't just sing and dance. It's singing and it's dancing. It tucks you into bed at night and it wakes you up with a blowjob and a cup of tea.
That is the life, isn't it?
It is.
That is the life.
It is.
And it's a bloody good sales system and does that, and it fucks you to sleep, which John carelessly left out there.
Well, I did, but that's because my testosterone is low, isn't it? So I can't be bothered at the moment.
Yeah, it's only a blowjob in the morning. Then you're done for the day. I'm surprised you
I'm done for the week, mate.
God.
Fingers crossed that my blood's come back so I can go on the TRT again.
Fingers crossed. We all love a roided up John.
Yeah. You did tell me a story about fingers earlier on this morning, didn't you? But we won't go into that.
And swiftly moving on.
Swiftly moving on.
That is definitely not one for public consumption.
Well, I don't know.
So we want to...
It is.
We'll save that one for Elite. I don't mind telling stories like that for Elite. Even Call Control, I'd feel a little bit sharing it in there, but Elites can find out that story. So if you want to figure out the story of fingers and hand sandwiches, come to Elite. Anyway, so today we want to talk a little bit about as John said, the sudden uplift in sales, because from the outside looking in, if we was just to present you that data, you'd probably think we were mental. Like, what the fuck have these boys been doing? What were they doing so poorly at the start of the year, and what they're doing so good at the beginning of the year? But the truth is a lot simpler, to be honest. Occam's razor we purposely took our foot off the gas because we were building something. We was building another program, another product, and we were figuring out our sales systems, our delivery systems, and all of that boring stuff. And then about 3-4 weeks ago, we was like, right, let's put pedal to the metal. And John was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's get on the sales train. Little did I know, John ran away with the sales process we spoke about and turned it upside down, inside out, tore it to shreds, put it back together again, burnt it because he didn't like it, went and got some more new raw materials, and has built an absolute masterpiece of a sales system which has allowed us to do those numbers with such a high close rate. Is that right, John?
It is. Let me explain. I mean, why we suddenly decided to put our foot down is not the point. There's some personal stuff going on in my life that meant I have to work less and more effectively, which is actually a good thing because it meant we had to focus. So the first thing we did, we set our intention. That's really important. But what we did figure was we set the intention, we know what we wanted to do, so then we decided to focus. Now, I came to the realization, and this is really actually very important for everyone. I came to the realization I didn't need to learn any more marketing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not claiming I know everything because clearly I don't. There's a lot of areas in marketing I know very little about, like Google AdWords, Facebook advertising. In principle I get it, but I don't know the details. But the thing is, I don't need to either. I know enough. I know more than enough to do what I want to do and to teach others to do what they want to do. I mean, in terms of people in the world and their knowledge of marketing, I'm probably in the top 1/100th of 1% because of my experience in it. I don't need to know any more marketing. What I need to do is keep doing more marketing, but do it focused. That was setting the intention. What are we going to do? We want to fill a leak. We want to get more people to call control. Everything else can go fuck itself with a cactus and a dried fucking pumpkin. So, what I did decide I needed to do was get better at selling. It's all well and good putting leads into the business, but if my closing rate is only 20%, which is kind of industry average, 25%, which is industry average, 20%, which is acceptable, that's not good enough for me. I'm not an average kind of guy. So what I did is I studied selling. Now, I don't know how many of you people listening to this are autistic, or how many of you people, if you understand what it's like when you are autistic, when you have a special interest. To put some context around this, when I applied for a place on my degree course in 1986, the guy turned me away. He said, I hadn't got any A levels or anything. I just got O levels and a BTEC level 3 from BT. I was just a fucking technician. And on paper, I wasn't particularly well qualified. And the guy says, you won't be able to keep up with the maths. We want A level students only. So in a fit of petulance, I slammed the phone down on him because I got the rejection letter. So I phoned him up and then I slammed the phone down when he said that. And then I rethought my position. I actually wrote him a letter of apology and he called me in for an interview. And he said, look, I'm going to offer you a place. Not because I think you're competent necessarily, but because you had the balls to apologise to me. And that alone has given me, I'd take a chance on you. 4 years later, I graduate with a first at the top of my class. I got the most marks of anyone on the entire course. I more than vindicated his choice. But that's because I studied. Okay. Well, I've done the same kind of intensive study of selling. And as Connor said, I put together a system. I tested it. It worked. Didn't like it. Too exhausting. So I tore it down again, burned it up and created another one. And that works like a dream. Put context on that. Okay. Hitherto, I would wake up in the mornings with a sales call in that day and I'd be dreading it. And I'd be exhausted at the end of it. So, yes or no, whether I sold something or not, I'd be exhausted. Yesterday I did one and I made a sale, of course, 18k, and I came off it and I want to do another one now. Because it's the way it works is I actually close the sale up front. So in the first 10 minutes, I know whether it's going to be a no or not.
Which is incredible.
So I'm saying with a very high degree of confidence. What it means is I never get told at the end, no, that's too expensive, can't afford it, I'm going to think about it. Those three things are not possible.
And I don't think there's a single person here listening to this podcast that doesn't have some form of sales meeting within their process, whether they're submitting things for tender, there's still those meetings before the contracts are actually signed. When you get that moment where they're about to sign the contract, pen is about to meet the paper, and they go, anything we can do about that price? There'll be
Yeah,
people that are
that
in,
wouldn't happen to me.
no,
It
it
couldn't
wouldn't.
happen to me.
And there's people that are listening to this that probably run very similar business to us, that definitely run sales meetings. And they're probably learning off the same people that we once upon a time learned from before we thought, no, fuck this. This is all shit.
Let's do
Burn,
it better.
burn it, burn it, burn it. It's exhausting. It's complex. It's too scripted. So we burnt it. But there's one thing that you skipped over at the beginning there that I do want to cover quickly. We both had circumstances either thrusted upon us or decided that we were going to enter into that really put some constraints on us and the
Yeah,
business. And
definitely.
this is really important. And John skimmed over it rightfully because the sales is the magic here. But if we're going to give you a complete story as to how and why this has happened, we need to start there. Shit happened is the short version. Shit happened. And at the time shit happened, we had a vision of a products business where we had a couple of higher end things, but then lots of smaller products below it. A tall pyramid is the way to describe it. We'd have multi layers and lots of products all knocking around. Circumstances obviously conspired against us, and we was like, we can't run that sort of business anymore. It's too complex, it's too time intensive, and it will be a nightmare to manage. So we said, what do we do? And we was like, well, we need to sell fewer things. Check the
For more
grammar, it's
money.
perfect. For far more money. So we asked ourselves, what does that look like? We embraced the constraints. We was like, well, if John can only work this many hours and Connor can only work at these specific times per day, how do we get maximum money while still delivering a world-class client experience within these constraints? And rather than trying to find ways around them, we just embraced them and said, right, these are the boundaries that we have to operate within. We came up with world-class solutions, and then we was like, right, that's all we're selling. And once you know you're only selling really two things, the sales game becomes a lot fucking easier because you've not got 10 different products flying through your mind. You haven't got 10 different solutions flying through your mind at any given time. And there's a lesson in there because if you feel like you can do anything at any given time, you'll likely do nothing. If you've got 5 different ways you're thinking of selling, well, I could sell via email, I could sell via action plans, I could sell via phone call. You'll likely do all of them very poorly or none of them at all because you'll be paralyzed by the choice. The same comes to your product lines. Well, I could do one-to-one coaching. Well, I could only do projects that are worth 5 million plus. When you've got all of these options, again, you'll probably settle somewhere in the middle for no good reason other than it feels right and it's a safe choice. But it's not often the right choice. And the reason it gets like that is because there's no constraints put upon you. Constraints breed creativity. Constraints give you focus. And you should always be introducing constraints onto yourself, even if there are none being forced upon you. We do this all the time here at Well-Fed Business. Obviously, we've got little Holly that does a lot of the project work with me, so we can let John off the leash and be Mr. Salesman. And if we've got a project where everything is open-ended and we've got 1,000,001 options, we'll purposely introduce constraints because that gives us a very narrow, I won't say laser focus because I know how much it pisses John off, gives us a very narrow focus and few toys to play with, which forces us to maximize the blocks that we have. 2 world-class products that has made it fucking easy for John to sell because you can't sell shit if you got a shit product.
Well, on that topic, I mean, it's simple. You can imagine a kind of a very condensed dialogue. You know, here's your problem. Here's the problem as I see it. We can solve it. The next step is this, and there's only one, so it's dead simple. There's only one thing we sell, and it will solve your problem. There's no ifs and buts, and you either have it, or you don't. Well, you know, that in a nutshell is my sales process, pretty much. And
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot more than that, but effectively we sell one thing. I mean, we actually sell 2. We sell core control and then elite, but those 2 things, they're a vertical. They're a silo. They're not a fucking horizontal. So elite is a like a more concentrated, focused, more time with us version of core control.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we sell. And if you want something different, go somewhere else. And the thing is, because of our front end marketing and our pre-sales process with Connor on the Triage, we are only ever speaking to people for whom that solution will work. We're not speaking to people it's not appropriate for with a 90% probability. That's why I have my sales call, just in case somebody gets through Connor's net.
Yeah.
And this is not difficult. I mean, it's not complicated. It's simple. It's not easy because I'm not going to go into it now. If you want to know this, you have to pay us. But the sales process, I've completely turned it around on its head. Okay. It even goes against what I have done and taught in the past. Not that I taught was wrong, because it wasn't, because it obviously worked. I mean, I've been doing it for years and I've made a lot of money doing it. But this is better.
Yes,
and it's a complete
just not as
reversal of everything everybody else believes is true.
You probably, to bring this into perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your previous close rate with the old system was 35%.
Something like that, yeah.
It was around 35%, which at the time we were happy with. There was no burning desire to be like, right, we've got to get it up to 50, was there, at the time?
No.
It was like, oh, we'll tighten up the qualification maybe a little bit on the front end. We're learning from the sales calls. The wrong sort of people perhaps are getting through. That's why it's lower. But not once did we look at the sales process. Not once. We looked more at the qualification, the quality of leads.
The marketing as well.
The marketing. But we embraced the constraints and then we set a focus. We said, right, we're entering a season of sales. We are going to become the dog's bollocks at sales. We've always been more than good enough at sales, more than understood it as a concept, a fuzzy concept. We've more than understood it enough to teach it, give advice, deliver results for ourselves and our clients. But obviously, as John said, that's never enough for him. John went away to study it because we set our intentions, right? We're only selling these things. We embraced the constraints. We changed our job roles within the business, our responsibilities, our tasks. We turned everything upside down, and then we focused. And we focused on selling. And funnily enough, what you focus on,
get more of it.
You get more of it. It tends to grow. I think is it Moore's law, or is that the plate thing?
No, Moore's law is the thing where about technology doubles over 18 months. I think that's Moore's law.
What you focus on grows. Law. Quick mid-podcast Googling. The law of... Who calls these things? Who decides these things are law anyway?
Well, Moore's law came from a guy called Moore. He was the first one to observe it. I think he's dead now.
Really?
I think he died recently, actually.
Oh God, I'm on the wankiest blog you've ever seen in your life.
I've seen some pretty wanky blogs.
No, that's terrible. Moving on. Whatever law it is, Connor's law. When you focus on sales, funnily enough, you make more fucking sales. Where your attention goes, the thing fucking grows. I think the cringy saying is.
Yeah, that's straight out of NLP or something.
That is very NLP.
Something else now. Okay, we did all this regardless of how we kind of felt about it. I didn't want to do sales calls. I absolutely did not want to do sales calls again because I've done them in the past over the last 5 years. I've done a lot of them and they're exhausting. And I was thinking, this is why we were going to build a product business and sell it with video sales letters, which I'm more than equipped to write as a fucking A-list copywriter, etc. Because I didn't want to do sales calls. But then when these circumstances came along and, it was choices, actions, consequences. If we'd have carried on, we would not have made enough money. You just wouldn't have done it. They're in a slowly sinking ship. We just wouldn't have been able to sustain it. So if I wanted the consequences of loads of shitload of money, more than we might have ever made before, I had to take certain actions. That was a choice. So it's like, I didn't have to do sales calls, but if I didn't, the consequence would be it'd be a fucking disaster. So my next thing was, okay, I've got to do sales calls. So how can I make sales calls bearable, better? Well, okay, I have to change the way I'm selling. So that's what I did. And it is fucking, even though I say it myself, it is inspired. It is brilliant. It is world class.
It is brilliant. It is world class. And there's something interesting that you did there. You found yourself in a situation where it was like, right, got to do sales calls because historically that's the thing that's produced us the most amount of cash. But you changed the narrative around it. You asked yourself a good question. How can I make this more bearable? And asking yourself the right questions in difficult situations is the way out of any difficult situation. Simply by inverting the questions that you're asking yourself, you'll come up with better answers. And John asked himself that question, and he was like, well, I need to speak less because speaking is tiring.
Yeah.
And I need to have less, scripted questions written down because they feel awkward. And that's not
I
really
need to
how
get
John
I need to
goes.
get answers quicker. I need to get the end of the call as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I never cared whether it was yes or no. I know I lost any emotional connection to sales a long, long time ago, so I never cared about the outcome. But just purely out of energetic terms and temporal terms, I wanted to get the no. I want to get a no in the first 2 minutes on the call if possible.
Yeah, go
I've
for
not
no.
lost anything. Here's the thing, people say, "Oh, you can't do that because you might lose a sale." I never had a sale. You can't lose what you haven't got. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the call yesterday was about an hour and 20 minutes, as I recall. The one before that was nearer 2 hours. They average between an hour and a half and 2 hours. If it's going to be a no, I want to get to no in 5 minutes. If I go to an hour and a half and it's still a no, okay, that's acceptable. I don't feel anything about it, but it's still been a waste of my time. So as quickly as I humanly can, that was my defining thing. I want to get that no as early as I possibly can. The whole system is based on that. Most people listening to this won't have the courage to do what's required to get a no as early as possible because they are living in the vain hope that somehow between the start of the call when the prospect has got no intention of buying and the end, some magic will happen and they'll change their minds. No, it never works like that. You can't convince or persuade anyone to do anything. And if you do, that's when you start getting people maybe reneging on their agreement. Buyer's remorse. I promise you, I will never get buyer's remorse from my sales process. Ever. It's just not possible.
And we've purposely defied industry norms in that sense as well. So before, the conventional wisdom is you don't get off the phone without, if you're getting them to fill in, say, payment details online, you stay on the phone with them whilst they do that to make sure that they do. You essentially keep them hostage. That's the conventional wisdom that's taught in the world of sales. The conventional wisdom is also you take the number yourself, which is, I'm pretty sure, is a breach of fucking probably some GDPR or something. But you take the details, the card details yourself to store locally. So if the first charge fails, you can try and charge the card again yourself. The other conventional wisdom is if they don't close on your first close, you've got 9 different other closes to follow up with. All of these things introduce friction in a bad way. Pressure. And the more pressure you put on a prospect, the higher chance there's going to be a nice big refund. And then Stripe or Go Cardless or your bank itself might close you down. And then you've got no way of taking payments. And you've fucked it all up just because you've entered into a high pressure sales tactics game. Bollocks. And that's not natural to John, is it? It's not natural to you.
Yesterday, I was talking about this to Connor before we came on air, before we started recording. Obviously, I'm not going to divulge details of who it was. But right at the last minute, just before my final question, okay, he asked me, I said, any questions? And he asked me a question. And right at that point, even at the last minute, I pushed him away and says, well, actually, possibly not. This might not be the right thing for you.
Giving away too much of a secret there, John.
Should we let Holly? Should Holly leave this in?
Yeah, let her
leave it in.
Let her leave.
They'll never figure out what I said or why.
At the very least, we'll leave it for bronze. Yeah, maybe we'll cut it out for the masses. So if you're in the masses and you're hearing this, there's little nuggets like that littered all throughout the podcast that sometimes we cut out and leave it just for bronze. If you want to be part of that, well, then you're gonna have to buy the book. It's £5. Wellfedfreelancer.com. With that being said, that book is being retired soon because hopefully Johnny will be finishing our newest,
end of April,
goodest, bestest, brightest, loveliest book, and that will be paper
only,
paper mache. But it's
this marketing and sales thing is not hard. The guy I spoke to yesterday, probably 3 years, I think it was pre-COVID, he asked me on LinkedIn if I could help him sell some products. And I went backwards and forwards, and I says, look, I could, but yeah, I'd have to charge you a shitload of money. And there's a better solution. I sent him away somewhere else to someone else's product. A guy called Shane Malak, the guy behind Thrive Themes. He's got I can't even remember what it's called now, but it's basically how to set up a website to sell products. A much better solution for him for $200 and not the several thousands I would have charged him. So I told him no. Well, about 2 years later, he came back and joined us on a boot camp for 500 quid. Then he came to a live event for about the same amount of money. And yesterday he joins us for Elite for a lot of money. And I told him no. I refused to sell him something because it wasn't the right thing. And integrity pays. Like I said, no attachment to the outcome. I won't sell the wrong thing. And that is not, I mean, a lot of people say that, but they don't mean it. I prove it. I just live it. You know? And it ain't because I'm a nice guy. It's because I don't want to be dealing with the grumpy customer at the end of it.
Yeah, definitely. Fuck that. No. That little two-lettered word, no.
The most powerful word in the English language, no.
If you've got the cojones and the understanding of sales to be able to say no in the face of a prospect who is that close to handing over cash, well, then you understand the game and you hold all power. If you can say no to someone that's like, right, take my money, and you've got the bollocks to say, not sure about that, mate. If you can't
Convince
see the
me
power
why
of
I
that,
should.
if you can't see the power of that, then my God, you're blind. Go follow 10x Numpty or whatever his name is.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you let go of your emotional need to close any one particular sale, because don't get us wrong, we know we need to make sales.
Every business does.
You know, if we didn't make sales for a long enough period of time, we would be homeless and hungry, and we would die. You know, or we'd end up in a fucking homeless shelter or
That'd be nice.
whatever. You know, on the streets. Now, so we do need clients, but the thing is, it's like bus. You don't need any one particular bus to get to your destination. If you miss one bus, there's always another one. You'll get there. I'm not talking about missing appointments, but if you just need to get to Glasgow at some point, it doesn't matter which bus you get, or which train you get, or which car you drive, or even walk. You'll get there if you want to. So we need clients, but you've got to understand you don't need any one client. And if you do, if you find that your business is if you lost your biggest client, you'd be in trouble. Not just inconvenienced or pissed off.
Trouble.
You'd be in financial trouble. You have got a real problem in your business and you do need to fix it. The worst case of this I can remember is a factory, I believe it was in Belfast, and they used to make stuff for Marks and Spencer's under the old St. Michael brand, if you remember that. And one day, St. Michael, Marks and Spencer's, just didn't renew the contract that they'd had for decades. The next day, the company wound up and shut its doors because they had no other clients. That's an extreme version of it. I'm sure if you Google this, you'll find it online. Now, whether it was the next day or not, I don't know. But with you know, basically, the business had no other clients other than Marks and Spencer's, St. Michael brand. Well, that's an extreme case, but I know a lot of people. I speak to them; they've got one big client, and if they lose that client, they're fucked. The reverse of that is if they're in that situation, the client does have a lot of power because if they say, "Well, we're going to pay you 10% less," what are you going to do? If you don't know how to get better clients who pay you more, and you don't have the luxury of saying, "Okay, fuck you, I'm not doing it," you know, go away. But when you're in a situation like I am, like we are, where we know we've got this machine, and we just turn the handle and we put in the raw materials of leads, and out the other end comes money. Well, I'll tell anybody no. I'll fire any client. I'll give a refund to people if I want, because I don't care, because I can just make more money because I know how to sell.
Can I say something?
And I can teach you. Yes, of course you may.
This will be probably the wankiest thing I ever say on this podcast. I may even get Holly to cut it out. I'm more worried about being a wanker than giving away the secrets. But our good friend Vicky Lebouchediere taught me this when I was in turmoil, when I was 19 years old, and I'm sure every seasoned business owner has heard this, and it's cringe, but it's true. It's the whole scarcity and abundance mindset. If you think that stuff,
yeah, it's wanky.
It's so wanky, but it's true. If you believe that prospect in front of you is one of finite prospects that you can get in front of, well, you're going to act out of fear. You're going to act desperate. You're going to do things that you wouldn't usually do if you had the belief that this is just one of infinite prospects, and there's another one coming around the corner soon. And we don't teach shit like that inside of our programs, because I would never want to release something formally that disgustingly wanky and common. But it applies to this situation.
Yeah, it's an accurate observation. You think about it. There's 8 point something billion people on the planet. There are 3.5 million, I believe, small businesses in the UK alone. So let's just say 3.5 million. Okay. If you sell B2B, say in our business, there's probably, I don't know, there's probably 100,000 businesses out there in the UK who are a good target for us. Say it's 1%, so it's what, 30,000? Well, we couldn't have 30,000 people, clients.
I wouldn't want that business.
We couldn't close, to all intents and what I'm getting at is this: to all intents and purposes, your market, size of your market, is functionally infinite, because there's more people out there who could buy what you want than you could ever sell to. And even if it's only one more than you could ever sell to, well, it's 1 or 1 million more, it doesn't matter. Once you've hit that limit, you've hit that limit. Now, okay, please don't take this to extremes and say, yeah, but if I'm selling a digital product, I could sell an infinite number of them. Well, you can, but if you want to be stupid about it, if you had the kind of traffic volumes that, say, Facebook have, you'd have to put a massive infrastructure in place, and that's going to cost you millions. So no, you couldn't. Your target market is of a finite, or your ability to serve people, especially in a service business, is you're of a finite size. And as long as there's one more person in your market than you can serve, to all intents and purposes, functionally, it's infinite. And in fact, it's several orders of magnitude bigger. We could probably, say our consulting gig, we go into a firm for 5 days for a shitload of money and teach them this stuff and put a system in place. Well, if we do that for 5 days and we worked every day of the year, we've got 52 clients we could possibly do in a year. Okay. Well, we ain't going to be working every week. So say we work every fortnight. It's only 26. So it doesn't matter whether there's 27 people or 27 million people who want to work with us. You can only do 27 companies, 5 days every fortnight. Get a sense of perspective, people.
And that's why you need to embrace constraints. That's why you need to embrace constraints, because if you do feel like you can sell to everyone and everyone, you're not going to sell to anyone whatsoever. No, not by any design, only by luck. We recognized all of these things, right? Total client caps. How many people can we service at any one time? And then we asked ourselves, like, well, what does that infrastructure look like, as John touched upon there, in terms of staffing costs, in terms of IT costs? What does that infrastructure look like? And we designed everything in such a way that we were going to make the amount of money that we're happy to make with a business that we're happy to run. And we was going for a large numbers business before. No, now it's just bespoke, high price, small numbers business, isn't it, John? And that's all because we embrace constraints.
I think, well, to clarify that, we always had the vision of a small numbers business at the top end, elite core control.
Yeah.
The way we're feeding it is different. We were feeding it through the low end, like a pyramid. So people were coming in with a low price book to a fairly low cost inner circle with a newsletter, and then feeding up. And it works. There's no two ways about it. It works. And the attraction of it for us is that it's easy. It requires no real-time intervention. It's just me sitting here writing stuff, but it's slow. So at the bottom end, it's big numbers. Well, that means labor intensive, getting the ads and things. Okay. Well, now what we do is, rather than, that's a shotgun approach, right?
Yeah.
Scattergun, big wide net kind of thing. Well, now we've switched it to a very tightly focused, like the M8. We call it the M82, named after the Barrett M82 sniper's rifle, 50 caliber. Okay. So now it's a small numbers business at the top, as it always was, but now it's more of a fucking cylinder rather than a pyramid.
Yeah.
And it's a very narrow thing. So we pick off the people we want to talk to. And then by the time we talk to them, well, there's a 72.7% chance that they're going to buy from us, because they won't get to talk to me if it's any less than that. It's just the way it works. I can teach this to you all, but you have to pay us.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So
don't do it for free.
If we release this as an emergency podcast, there's time for you yet to get your application in to
Yeah.
join us in Elite.
I think I need to make a point here. Elite, we teach everything in core control you need. But in Elite, we focus on two things. We focus on leadership and sales. And it's not obvious to you, and it won't be obvious until you're in Elite and I share why it's obvious. It should be obvious. It's obvious to me. Leadership and sales are two sides of the same coin. There's no argument about this. You can either believe it and accept it, or you're wrong. It's simple as that. Leadership and sales are two sides of the same coin. And we teach them both, but we really fucking double down on it in Elite. Now, it's not that we resent teaching it, or we won't teach it in core control, because we will and we do. But we don't focus on it because people aren't ready for it in core control.
Yeah, it's different strokes for different folks. Core control has a curriculum to follow, and then it's got various calls that our smart clients take advantage of to then bend it to fit their business, to get the implementation perfect. Where Elite, it's inevitable that we're going to have more conversations because we're meeting up 4 times a year. There's a smaller group,
Well, they
which
have
is
our
easier to
WhatsApps
manage.
as well, and the
Exactly,
Zoom
they've got
calls and
private
shit.
access. So it's inevitable that they're going to have more conversations. And from my experience, the more touch points people have with us, whether it's friends, clients, whatever, the smarter they become and the better their lives are. We are a pair of Midas touch numpties.
Yeah.
John isn't pissing. I believe he's pouring himself some water for those that can hear that. There's the evidence.
Well, there's a lot in this podcast, and you'd be forgiven for thinking this is just us blowing our own horn, which it is to some extent. I won't deny it. Hey, we want to market ourselves and sell ourselves. But there are some lessons here too. You could do this if you wanted to. It might take you longer than it's taken us, and you might have to learn from us to do it the same way. Because, to be fair, it's unlikely you're going to have the same skills to create a system like ours without our help or someone else's help. Because this is our job, this is our profession. But the point is, you could do it, whether you do it in a short period of time with our help, or a longer period of time with someone else's help, or a very long period of time doing it yourself. Anyone could do this. This is not genetic. This is not like that fucking cyclist, Lance Armstrong, who had a VO2 max of 70-something. Most of that's genetic. Don't get me wrong, he worked hard and took steroids.
I was going to say, took some drugs.
No amount of medication and hard work will make up for the fact he had fucking great genetics. Okay, this isn't a case of that. This is a case of anybody could do this if they wanted to. All right? But if you're focused on the negativity of, say, social media, and buying into that fucking scarcity mindset, the poverty mindset, about how bad the economy is and how the algorithm's fucking you over, so all I'm going to do is just keep posting and hoping. No, you won't succeed. You're going to fucking struggle, and good luck to you.
I've seen that a lot recently. For all my sins, I logged onto LinkedIn yesterday. Yeah, I know, really wanky, disgusting. I was checking the messages anyway. Well, I wasn't. Well, I did end up scrolling, which is why it's a perilous place to go. But by the by, I saw a lot of people saying, I'm doing everything I can on LinkedIn to get leads and clients, but LinkedIn is conspiring against me because they keep changing how content is shown to people. And I just felt sorry for them. There's no arguing against the fact that LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful tool, but they can't see beyond it. And the minute that there's an algorithm change, however they identify that, is fucking, I've got no idea. Every time there's an algorithm change in their eyes, their business crumbles in front of them, and then they publicly cry about it. Jesus wept. What are you playing at? There's a better way of doing things. And yes, it does involve LinkedIn a little bit, but it's a different approach entirely. The internet has made people soft. There was a world of business before the internet, and people are forgetting that. I know we hammer this home all the time, and we're not saying that the internet is useless, far from. But it is not the be-all and end-all of business. And if you can't get leads off social media, that's your fault for thinking that's the only way you can get leads. That is entirely on your shoulders. And I'm a bit fed up of it, to be honest. This chronically online crowd that cannot see past Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Pinterest. Business is a beast. It's a mammoth. And you're treating it like it's this fucking easy as pie little caterpillar that you can put in a jar and put on your desk and go, oh, hello, little caterpillar. No, it's a behemoth that you need to learn to slay, learn to dance with, get on its back and slit its throat.
You really need to work on your metaphors, mate.
I'm fed up.
You're fucking dancing with a mammoth. What the
Yeah.
fuck is all that about?
Have you never seen it? They did a dance before they fought the mammoths in the Ice Age.
No, I wasn't there, mate. I'm old. I'm not that fucking old.
Have you never read about it?
No.
They did dances before they fought the mammoths.
I think that's probably conjecture.
I mean, there's no video proof.
All written evidence. It's just
There is. It's drawn on the inside of caves.
Cave paintings, yes.
That's written.
It's not written, is it? That's
That's
pictorial.
written.
And then we interpret the pictures.
And there was one picture. There was a mammoth, and there was lots of stick people doing this. No, they had a little motion graphic where if you moved another rock over the top, it looked like they were going like this.
They didn't, did they, Connor? You're making this up, aren't you, mate?
Conjecture.
Anyway, look,
How do you know?
We gotta go. When we start talking about dancing with mammoths, I realise that we've reached the end of what's useful to say.
Nah.
Anyway, so you know what to do if you want to think about joining us in Elite, get into the application process. Email Holly, 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 @wellfedbusiness.com. Get your application in by the 17th, well, the end of the 17th, so midnight on the 17th, midnight Monday, and we'll perhaps talk to you. If you're later than that, you're in the pipeline until 2024.
Is it going to be that long till we open the doors again?
That's what we said.
2024.
Unless something changes, which we can. We're women, we can change if we want to, change our minds if we want to. But the plan is 2024. Alrighty.
Cheerio.